Welcome to Millennial Musings. I'm Gladys.
And I'm Isabella. And we are just two opinionated millennials who sometimes make dumb mistakes. What we want to do here is to share our experiences and offer the advice that we wish we had received.
Disclaimer, we are not therapists or life coaches, and we have no actual criteria to be giving advice whatsoever. But we could be your new bestie or big sister. So sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready for some millennial musings.
So, now I know that it's bad, that it's terrible. You can drop the act now. It's okay. I've known the real deal about Santa Claus for years, and now I know about sex. You know, it's funny. I really thought my mother was being an insane prude when she said that sex is horrible for women. And now I can see that, in fact, my mother was the only woman who wasn't wanting to maintain this ridiculous, pervasive, media supported charade that sex is normal and that sex is a wonderful part of life, that sex is sexy. I mean, can we just admit it that sex is not sexy? Sex is horrible. In a way, I'm impressed with the depth of the conspiracy. If you think about it, it says something about the potential power of women, that the entire gender can collude in creating a sex is sexy myth. So, that might have been a bit intense, but for all the Gilmore Girl fans out there, you might have noticed that this speech is part of a conversation Rory and Lane have in season 7. In that episode, Lane and Rory meet up for the first time after Lane has gotten married and had her first time on her honeymoon. So now Gladys and I both, we don't think that sex is bad and terrible. But what we do agree with is that there are quite some myths about sex out there, and that society has interesting norms and points of views about sex, and that for some women, Lane's speech is actually the truth.
Yes, so as you have probably guessed by now, this episode is about sex. Let's talk about sex, baby.
Let's talk about you and me.
All the good things and the bad things. Thank you so much for that intro. This was so good. I've never seen Gilmore Girls, but I really like this. Yeah, and I would like to start us off with one of the first, not necessarily myths, but one of the first things that I think there's many different perspectives and just, different opinions. And that is just, in general, the definition or what actually constitutes as sex. What would that be for you if I asked you what is sex?
I think sex is a lot more than just simple penetration. I think it involves open communication, it involves understanding of your own body, it is about embracing vulnerability, and it is definitely not a flawless experience. Like Lane said, sex isn't always sexy, and it's also not exclusively centered around one gender. I think in reality there are a lot of awkward moments, pauses, weird noises, and so on. And I think it's actually quite imperfect. Whereas what we see in movies or on TV is often like this, just a proper contrast to what it can be, if you know what I mean. And that doesn't mean that I think sex is always bad. It's just like there's something more real to it than what you see on the screen, basically. So that's also kind of why I chose this scene from Gilmore Girls as an intro. It's very extreme in one direction, but I think it's just nice and refreshing to see that on TV, especially the time the show came out.
Yeah, because I tried to find a definition, just like because I kind of had my suspicions that the definition would be a little bit outdated. And depending on the source, I just found just very varied answers. There were dictionaries that said sex is the process of inserting a penis into a vagina, and then there were others that said it can include kissing, it can include cuddling, it can include so many things. So I would say in general, that's the first thing. I think the idea, like you said, that penetrative sex is the only valid form of sex is something that is still so pervasive in this society, I think, because I've had many of my friends say things like, "Oh, we didn't really have sex. We didn't do anything, only blowjobs." Okay. Well, like, I feel like that's because that idea that, penetrative sex is the only real form of sex. For example, you're first of all already excluding people, because that would mean that, for example, lesbian women never have sex. Like, that is just completely ridiculous. So, yeah, I just think that's the first thing I think we need to stop thinking about the only real form of sex, or like everything else being foreplay. Like, no, oral sex, hand stuff can just as well be sex. Because and then also it's also just a very well, it's also just, the whole thing is also just very focused on men as well, because as we know, well, maybe not everyone, the 20% of men who are listening, listen up, but like 80% of women, or people with vulvas, don't orgasm just because of penetration. So saying that penetrative sex is the only real form of sex already basically is saying that all that that matters is male pleasure.
Yes, exactly. It's very focused on that one gender in a way. I can actually throw in one of the myths that I have here. Well, we already talked about it, but one of the myths that I found is that people think women don't care as much about orgasms from sex as much as men do. And then that myth was linked to the orgasm gap for women. And it actually said particularly straight women. In that study, they said that in a survey of 52,000 adults of various sexual identities, they found that heterosexual women are less likely to orgasm during sex with a partner than any other group. They usually or always orgasm during sex at a rate of 65%. But for comparison, those numbers are 95% for straight men and 89% for gay men and 86% for lesbians. So I think there's a lot to learn from the queer community.
Yeah. I have the exact same study here.
Sorry.
so so this is a thing referred to as the orgasm gap, which is a thing. Also, women even tend to orgasm more when they have solo sex, even. So literally, they're like, for women, often the worst sex is with men, which is funny when so many men act like they have single-handedly invented sex. But also, then, on the other hand, I would say a reason for this, or like something that I think we have to be honest about here as well, is that I do think that often this is due to a lack of communication. Because if you're with a man and you tell him that everything's fine and that you're enjoying it, or you fake it, then how is he supposed to know? Like, how is he supposed to change anything? Because I do genuinely think that a lot of men think that penetrative sex is enough for women as well. But if nobody has ever told him that that's not the case, then
How should he know? Yeah. I mean, at this time that we live in, you could do your own research a little bit, maybe.
Oh yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah, I don't understand the whole meaning behind the faking it, unless you really just want it to be over and never see that person again. I don't know. But then even you could just say stop and I'm gone. I think there's a lot of insecurity on both sides. If we think of a heterosexual couple, or like two heterosexual people having sex with each other, because on the one hand, the woman maybe doesn't want to say anything because she doesn't want to have the guy feel insecure about it, or the woman feels insecure that she doesn't reach the point as quick as other women might have done it. Like, yeah, there's a lot to unpack here of why people would do it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I mean, I just also wanted to say, earlier when I mentioned the definition of sex, kind of in that same vein is also the idea of virginity, and like when do you lose your virginity and things like that. I actually read this book, I think it's called Sex Education for Adults or something, and it was really nice and it had lovely illustrations and everything. And in that, the author, I think her name is Ruby Rare, discusses that as well, like what is virginity, and that basically every first time is a first time in a way, like every first time with a new person, every time you have sex with, I don't know, a different gender, or even every time with the same person, but when you do something different. Solo sex is also a form of sex. So when exactly are you? And again, it's something that we have this very, very like precise, specific idea about, like, oh, this is when you lose your virginity. But again, I think that is quite outdated. Yeah, because also, of course, as we also know, not everyone's sexuality, or not everyone has the same type of sex, or not, there can just be so many different variations of people's sex lives. So again, that's saying that, for example, solo sex is also less valid than partnered sex or something, when maybe you prefer it that way.
Maybe you have a better time that way. This is a bit of a side note, but when I was doing my little research online, I found the term compulsory sexuality, and it's mainly related to ace people, so like people on the asexual spectrum. And the term itself refers to the way that society treats sex almost as a fundamental human experience, and also expects that everyone should be having frequent sex or should want to do so. Um, and it also refers to the ways that society kind of approves certain kinds of sex while they disapprove others, like we just said, the whole outdated definition of what sex means.
Speaking of, I think maybe this is a good moment for me to go into my experience. So I had partnered sex for the first time at the age of 30. So less than a year ago, which, as a society, I don't think I need to tell anyone that we see this as something quite unusual, even though I could give you at least 3 people in my social circle right now who are around my age and have also never had sex or have never even kissed anyone. So I do think it's a lot more common than we think, maybe. But yeah, so that was my experience. So for like 30 years of my life, I saw people around me get into relationships or start having casual sex, and yeah, that was never me, which led to people asking me if I was strictly religious, or basically what the reason was. Like they needed an explanation, and there wasn't really any. It was just like it never happened, like until my boyfriend. Now, I had never been in a relationship, and I also never wanted to have sex outside of a relationship, because to me, and this is me, this is just me, but to me, sex is something that I only wanted to do with someone because, well, I only wanted to do it with someone I was in a relationship with, because for me, it's like part of that connection. And I know that society doesn't see it the same way, or many people don't see it the same way. And that's absolutely fine. But many people weren't fine with me feeling that way, I noticed. And of course, when I was younger, I was very embarrassed. And then I would tell myself, like, okay, you're turning 20 this year, so this has to be the year. I don't care what happens, but this year you will have sex. And then I was like, okay, it didn't happen this year, but next year. And then it just, I felt bad. But then the older I got, the more I actually became very okay with the idea that I might never have sex. Honestly, at some point I was like, maybe that's just not something I ever do, which is fine. There are so many things that people have never done, like I don't know, it's okay. It's just one aspect of your life. It doesn't define you. It doesn't say anything about who you are.
Can I just ask, was it when you had those thoughts of like, okay, I'm turning 20 this year, it's gonna happen, and then like I'm turning 21, it's gonna happen? Did you think that because you wanted it to happen because you wanted it to happen for yourself, or because you just had a little bit of that societal pressure of like, I think it's time, like I need to tell people I've done the deed.
Definitely, I think probably a bit of both. Like I definitely, more than anything, I think I did want, again, and that kind of became, I became a lot less focused on that like these past couple of years, but when I was younger especially, I definitely wanted a relationship. And but yeah, so it was part of it. I never would have, because there is literally nothing easier than finding someone to have sex with. So if I would have wanted to do it just to get it over with, which I got told, by the way, like my friends were literally like, just go to a bar and like find someone and get it over with, literally get it over with. I was like, I don't want that to be my experience. I don't want for it to be something I have to get over get it over with. So it wasn't, I didn't feel the pressure that much that I was like, I need to do whatever it takes. It was more like, I want the full package. Like, I do want to find someone and I do want it to be nice. Sometimes I would tell myself, like, okay, I'm just going out next weekend. I'm just going to find someone and kiss them. And then that moment came and I realized I did not want to do that at all, because, yeah, that's another thing. Over these past couple of years, I kind of started thinking maybe I am I think demisexual is probably the term that I relate to the most, which, in case you have never heard that before, it basically means that in order to be sexually attracted to someone, there has to be some kind of emotional element as well. And so I did start thinking, am I maybe somewhere on the asexual spectrum? And then when I told people, most of them kind of completely brushed it aside and were like, no, I mean, you just don't want to have sex with anyone, but that's normal. But no, for me, it really meant that, like, I am rarely attracted to someone. As in, like, I have maybe met 5 people in my life that I have wanted to do things with, and that includes kissing. Like, I could go out and see someone who was, conventionally very attractive and who even maybe I found attractive, but if I would never. I did not want to do anything with them. Like, I didn't even want to kiss them or anything. The way I explained it was like, literally Harry Styles could come up to me and be like, let's kiss. And I'd be like, no, I don't know you. I don't want to do this. Which I don't think, based on what I've, heard and like my experience with the people around me, most people don't have that. I think most people, if they find someone very attractive, they would be okay with that. But yeah, so, and now I actually don't really know if I am on the asexual spectrum somewhere. I think so, but then, because for me now, the reason I do really enjoy sex is because it's with my boyfriend, and I don't think I would like it with anyone else. I think having sex now also kind of has solidified that for me, I think. Then again, I've also never been in a situation where I was really, really attracted to someone and they did want casual sex and it all happened at the right time. So I don't know if I would like that or not, but yeah. But I do think overall that my relationship with sex, or my attitude towards sex, is different than most people's. And when I started dating, that was definitely a thing as well, because when you start dating, especially online dating, there are these guidelines as well. And we talked about this a little bit in previous episodes, but like, people expect things. Like, I know that most of my friends, if they go on 3 dates and nothing has happened yet, they will tap out. They will be like, okay, it's clearly platonic. This is it. So that really stressed me out, because I was like, how do I tell someone that I like hanging out with them, but that I don't know if I will want to do anything physical with them in the next couple of like weeks or months or whatever. And then especially at our age as well, yeah, I don't know, most people just expect that you have done things. So I really worried about that. But then eventually Hinge, so I found my boyfriend on Hinge, and Hinge has demisexual as an option to add to your profile, which I think is really good. And yeah, so I put that on my profile, and my boyfriend knew, and like it all worked out really well. But it can be very difficult to navigate that, I think, because of the society that we live in and these ideas, exactly like you said, almost that like it's almost considered weird if you don't have that casual mindset towards sex.
Yes, I totally agree. It also makes me think about one night stands. Like, I don't know. I think, and I feel like most people I talk to agree with it, but the better you know a person, the better it is. And I know some people just don't want to be in a relationship, so one night stand is what they do, and I'm sure it's fine and it can be great as well. But for me personally, it's just like I don't know, it's not a vibe.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's kind
Yeah,
of
I
difficult
mean, yeah.
to relate to that, to wanting that, because I cannot imagine ever wanting that. But I do understand, of course, if like for whatever reason you don't want a relationship, or it's just not happening,
Yeah.
that you are craving that intimacy and that physical contact. Like I 100% understand. For me, it's also like the the hassle that would come with like finding someone, potentially having a stranger in your house that you then afterwards have to get rid of, like, or be in a stranger's house who can literally be a psychopath. um like you're in a very vulnerable position, and of course that should not even be a concern. Like of course people should be able to like find someone and go to their house in the middle of the night and nothing should happen to them, of course. But like there are dangers, and I feel like sometimes we kind of almost forget those a little bit, and I'm like, yeah,
I
just
know.
it would be too much hassle for me. I'm like, for what, like half an hour of pleasure? I might as well do that myself then, and then I don't have to deal with any strangers. It's like, and I also, yeah, I don't know. Like I also, have friends and many gay men, and well, many, like my best friends are gay men, and they, not all of them, but like a couple of them very much have that like, oh, I cannot go 2 months without sex, like I just cannot. So they inevitably put themselves sometimes in situations that I'm worried about, like. And then last year I had my birthday weekend in the Forest of Dean, so it was like a house in the forest, and it was 4 days, and one of my friends was like, oh, I wonder if I go on Grinder, if I will find a nice Welshman I can hook up with, like when you guys have gone to bed. And I was like, if you think I am letting you go out by yourself in the middle of the night, in the woods, in the middle of nowhere, because you can't go 4 days without some D, you've got me fucked up. You are not leaving this. You are not leaving this house.
Like I said, if I would have listened to all the true crime that I listen to now in my dating phase, I would have not gotten a single date. But I find the story funny. Funny story. Again, showing how naive I can be to certain things and why I'm maybe not the person for one night stands. So I was at a party, I think it was at my cousin's place, and that was back when I lived in Vienna, and we lived quite close to each other. And there was this one guy. I haven't talked to him at all during the party, except for the end, but like just because he was there and there was a group of people, like I wasn't aware that we actually having a conversation. Anyway, it was like 2 a.m. or something, and I was really hungry, and like 20 steps away from my apartment building was like this imbiss, like a little sausage set, like bratwurst sausage kind of thing, where you could just buy stuff in the middle of the night as well. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna get myself something to eat, maybe some fries or something. But I was really hungry. And then he said, oh, that random guy. Well, he wasn't that random. He was a friend of my cousin's, obviously. Like people knew him. I just didn't know him. He was like, I'll walk with you because I'm hungry too. Let's get something to eat. I was like, okay, fine. Not thinking about anything. So we were walking, and then that shop, however I want to call it, was closed. So I was like, oh my God, no, I'm really hungry. I'm going to go home and I'm going to make myself some fries. And he was like, oh, I would love some fries. And I was like, okay, you can have some fries if you like. So he came up, he went up with me, and I went into the kitchen and started preparing the baking tray. And he was looking at me like, what are you doing? I was like, well, I'm making fries. And he was like, okay, then. So I was in the kitchen. We were making fries, eating fries. And then all of a sudden he said, after eating some fries, he said, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I was like, okay. And I was ready to I was wearing a wig, and it was like the first time I really wore a wig out. One of the first times I really wore a wig out. And yeah, anyway, I get to that. He said he going to the bathroom. I was ready to get that wig off. And then he didn't come back, and I was like, where the heck is he? And he was just lying in my bed. He just literally was lying in my bed. I was really tired. I was like, okay, I guess you can stay. Nothing happened, believe it or not. I just went to the bathroom, didn't take the wig off because I was like, well, if I walk in now with like basic, because it was the time I had really short hair, basically with no hair, he's gonna be confused. I don't even know why I bothered about that though, because I wasn't planning on anything to happen. So nothing happened. I mean, I think he thought it would, but I was like, good night, and just turned around and slept. I know, it's a very bizarre story. Nothing happened. I just fell asleep. I don't know if he was lying awake wondering what the fuck is going on. And then in the morning, I mean, I had something to drink as well that evening. So yeah. But then in the morning, I was like, oh no, I actually told my roommate I'm gonna watch a dog. And because she had to go to work. So she was very like silently knocking on the door, and she's like, what's going on? Like, who is that? Like, just mouthing it. And I was sneaking out, and I was like, he literally just laid in my bed because I wanted to eat some fries. And then we sent the dog in who licked his feet, and then he woke up, and then he left.
Okay. That probably disgusts me the most out of this entire thing. However, so I have obviously never taken a stranger home or gone to someone's place. But I do want to like wager a guess, or like I do want to hazard a guess and say that you can probably kind of feel the vibe or like tell that is what's going on. If you feel like that person and you're in their house and like they're giving you nothing, like you were in this scenario and you were like making fries, I find it incredibly rude to go lie in someone's bed. And like, why were you not like? If that would happen to me, I would be like, "Excuse me."
I just really wanted to go to bed. I don't really remember what was going through my head at that time. Oh, and then the next day, he actually messaged me and asked me if I wanted to go for a meal with him and his grandparents.
What?
It was interesting. I don't know. It was one of the most random things that happened to me. But the thing is, I knew he wasn't like some kind of super weirdo, crazy person, because I knew he was friends with friends of mine. He was friends with my cousin, and they all liked each other. So I was like, it's fine. And also while I was studying and when we were going out, it was normal to sometimes just sleep at someone's place. But that was it was never that random.
Yeah, if you have at some point like asked if that's okay or if they've invited you, you don't just go to a stranger's place and just go to sleep there. I don't know. Well, again, maybe that's just me not having.
I don't know, but I was not getting that vibe. So here's me, completely innocent.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Again, something like this has never happened, but I've definitely had scenarios where like where I would go out with a friend and then they would kind of like get with someone, and then there would be a friend or like another guy, and then I would just be talking to them and just have like a normal conversation. I remember in Berlin, when I was living in Berlin, and I was there with my friend who like was trying to find a rebound. So we were there for 5 minutes and she was making out with someone else. So then I was kind of there by myself, and then there was this guy, we were having a conversation, and then we were on the dance floor, and all of a sudden he went, I'm going to kiss you now. And I was like, no, you're not. And I went to get my coat and I left.
Oh, I can see it happening. No, you're not.
Oh, I was not about that life. No, never. But yeah, and I mean, of course, like with everything I said earlier and everything, I don't want to sound too judgmental, or I'm like, that I don't understand that people have casual sex. I do. I just can't relate to it, but I understand why you would want to. But I also do think, and like I might get, I don't know, shit for this, but I do think that we live in a society that's very focused on it, to the point where, like, I don't know, like I've had friends, and we would go out and it would be a really nice night and we had a lot of fun and the music was great, and they would literally consider it a failure because like they didn't find anyone to hook up with. And that annoyed me and also insulted me a little bit, because it was like, what do then we would be in a taxi home and they would be like, oh, there was no one attractive there, like what an absolute drag this night was. And I was like, excuse me, can you not just, and that is something I really feel like, can you not just go out with friends just one time and just enjoy yourself? Like, why does everything have to be about that?
So I have, when I was Googling or trying to find information about millennials and sex specifically, I found this an article written for The Independent by Georgina Lawton. She's like a British, Irish, Nigerian writer. And the article is called Millennials Are Having Less Sex, but only because we've raised our standards. So first of all, she includes a few studies in this article. I'm going to go into those first and then into what she means with the standards part. So, one of the studies was done by the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. This study was published in the British Medical Journal in May 2019. And this study has shown that regular sexual activity between couples is on the decline. And it said that less than half of men and women in the UK, aged between 16 and 44 years old, have sex at least once a week. And then the steepest decline was among those who are living together, and they are over 25 years old, most of those. And then another study, some researchers looked at the data from the British National Survey of Sexual Attitudes and Lifestyles from 1991, from 2001, and from 2012. And they found that it's the millennials that are having less sex. They have 4.9 times a month sex if they're men, and 4.8 times a month if they're women, whereas 10 years ago it was 6.2 and 6.3 times. So it has dropped a little bit. So why she thinks that has dropped is, of course, again, they say the digital era, all the social media and that stuff can be a reason of it. And then obviously also the financial pressures, that we have more financial stress. But beside that, and what I find actually quite interesting, is that she says that she as a woman specifically feels that it has more to do with the fact that so many of us are now less willing to succumb to bad sex because we're more informed when it comes to our sexual encounters, and that reduces the likelihood of us having terrible sex. And I really agree with that. From a woman's point of view, because it wasn't too long ago where you couldn't find all these honest articles and open conversations in the internet or anywhere about sex. And now we have sex positive influencers and vloggers and on all kinds of social media platforms, or we have TV shows like Sex Education. Like, I think that shift that happened allows us to be a bit more picky. And also, like we said before, it's not that male centered anymore. You can choose your partner who maybe has learned a little bit more about it.
Yes. I wanted to mention something about that as well. And I think that definitely makes sense. And like I said, I think I mentioned this in last week's episode. Yeah. But like shows like Sex Education, or literally things that you just read about on social media. I mean, I know people who have like medical things, that or something that they were born with, or they had issues during sex or whatever, and they have learned things from social media that they have never been told by a medical professional. So I feel like that is something that back in the day you just did not have access to. So I definitely agree with that, because also I was thinking, um I had sex for the first time as a 30-year-old woman, which means that I had done some research, because I almost feel like, because I didn't have it, I was very interested in, okay, what would it be like and what would I want it to be like or whatever. And so I read a lot about it and everything. But over the years, I have had quite a few female friends, specifically women, who had almost accepted that sex was a bad and sometimes even a horrible experience for them. And then when I would have that conversation with them, or be like, oh, have you I remember a friend of mine who said that sex was just incredibly painful for her, and now I am talking about penetrative sex, and I asked her, oh, have you, like, do you use lube? And she had never thought about that, like that had never even crossed her mind. And I was like, but you've been sexually active for like 10 years. And it's just something that she had never even heard about, that this was something that many people need. I would say most people need. So
especially when you use contraception, the contraception pill, like that can literally make it a desert.
yeah. So the theory that I eventually kind of came to, and I might be completely wrong, but when we were younger, there was zero sex education that focused on female pleasure or anything. And also, the sex we used to see on TV was literally the man thrusting a few times, grunting, and then, and then going to sleep, and that was it. And I always feel like maybe some of us who like became sexually active, like, and specifically I mean young, maybe as a young girl with guys, maybe just accepted that that is what sex is, and maybe they never questioned it further or something. And it really, and I've thought about this a lot, and like it really saddens me and it angers me a little bit, because just the fact that so many women go through this experience or are just having sex and it's just not nice for them and it's not a good experience for them, and they just feel like they have to because they're in a relationship or because it's just expected from them, and it's not a good experience. I just feel like, and of course there's like reasons, or you can have, vaginismus or whatever, and then you're maybe like working on that or whatever. So of course I can see that, like, in some scenarios that would be like part of the journey or whatever, but just in general, the fact that there's so many women out there who have just accepted that, yeah, it's just horrible for me, but I feel like I have to, that is just, I find that so sad.
Yes, it is quite sad, and that's why communication is key. And I think and this is my straightforward black and white opinion, but if you can't talk about sex with your partner, you probably shouldn't, well, you probably won't enjoy it as much.
Yeah, but that because that's the thing, like we talked about casual sex a little bit, but also or the idea that if you're single, that you then have to be into casual sex or have to enjoy casual sex, which of course is absolutely fine, but that's just not everyone's experience. But then also, on the other hand, even if you're in a relationship, there is still the idea that, if you don't have sex for 2 weeks, ooh, what's going on there? There's something wrong. And it's like, no. And when I was younger, I was like, ooh, sex seems really nice. I didn't know, because I'd never, well, I had done solo things, but I was like, ooh, the day I get a boyfriend, I'm gonna be at it every single day, because like, if you have the opportunity every day, if you're attracted to your partner, then you probably have sex all the time. But no, because I had not really taken into consideration that you have other things to do in real life. And also, yeah, like our generation, some of us are working 2 jobs to pay our gas bill. So like we don't always have the time or the energy.
Yes, and also this is just It's just a minor thing that keeps you from having sex. But what couples do together the most is eat. And the amount of times I overeat or eat something that makes me very gassy, it happens too often. Okay, this is not sexy.
But this is the thing. Also, like, I'm a night person. I'm a night owl, so I just stay up very late, and then when I'm tired, I'm tired. I just have to go to sleep. I mean, no, that's not to say like I really enjoy sex. I really enjoy it, but also because it is in a very healthy way now, because I'm in a very healthy relationship, because it's that connection I have with my boyfriend, but I have also thought quite a lot about, like, what if you're in a relationship where and things are just not that great and you don't even really want to, but you just feel like you have to. Yeah, I don't know. And
Yeah, but that wouldn't happen to me because I would immediately say something. I just can't not complain. It just would work, but that's just me.
I know so many people are in that situation though.
It comes from that male-centered upbringing in a way, and not even upbringing by parents or anything, but like just, I mean, look at the movies we watched. The only movie I can literally think of on the top of my head that I watched when I was younger is, what is it called? Is it called Friends with Benefits? It's with Justin Timberlake and Mila Kunis, and they decide to have like be friends with
Yes.
benefits. And there's this scene where each of them just says, "Oh no, go more to the right," and like gives instructions on how to do things. And I was like, "Oh, that's okay then." Because in other things, like I'm pretty sure somewhere in Sex and the City, they say something, and then the men are insulted that you even try and tell them how to do things.
Yes. Exactly. That's good
Yeah.
actually that they showed that in that scene, because yeah, that just is so important. And like, why not? Why would you? Yeah.
And also, what I wanted to say when you talked about your first time and everything, I actually think, because when I think back of how, not how I was growing up, but like when you are at that age where people start having sex, I was like, I was a bit older than them, than most of the people I was friends with. But you are quite young, where everything is so awkward already. And then you're with a person that's probably most likely a similar age to you, and then you just decide to do this both together for the first time. So when people talk about their first time and it was weird and it was horrible or whatever, I couldn't really relate to, because I waited a little bit longer, not a lot longer, but a little bit longer, and the person was also again 2 years older than I was, so it was great. I was like, why is everyone complaining about this? So where I'm going with this is, I think you might have more fun if you wait until you are a bit older, because you're just more confident. The other person might be more confident. The awkward noises or things that could happen during and weird, like, you just know more. And even if it then still goes wrong, at least you have something to laugh about, because you know, oh my god, I don't have to move country now and hide myself.
I mean, if I would have had sex as like an 18-year-old, I was so incredibly insecure. I was so embarrassed about my body. I never in a million years would have told anyone what I liked. If I didn't like something, I never would have. I probably would have accepted that most of it was not about me, or like I don't know. I can't even imagine.
I feel like that's this rush when you're a teenager. It's like everyone is having sex right now. I can't be the odd one out. Okay, so I mean, we mentioned that there are going to be some myths that we're going to talk about, and we talked about most. I've written down 5 specific ones. I'm just going to go through them. Some of them we already talked about, and some of them we haven't. But, well, let's just get into it. So, the first myth I actually found when I was actively looking for them was that sex is just like what you see in porn. And I know this is nothing new, nothing mind blowing. We all know that, unfortunately, some men just learn everything from porn. And I mean, it is because for a significant number of young people, pornography often is their first initial exposure to sex. But there has been a study, it was a few years ago already, in 2016. It's been done by the Middlesex University in London, and that reveals that 39% of 13 to 14-year-olds expressed the desire to mimic the behaviors that they saw in porn. That's quite a high percentage, and I'm not sure how many 13 or 14-year-olds were actually honest in that study. So, yeah.
Wow. I mean, like I do think, of course, sometimes we try and act like not basically all of us have watched it or like watch
Yeah.
it, which I just think is ridiculous because it's not just older men who do it or whatever. Literally everyone watches it. However, I always think like the big platforms that we're probably all thinking about now, the fact that those websites have a female friendly category tells you everything you need to know, I think, about
How it should be
what it
most of the
is in
time.
general.
Yeah.
And then also I at some point read somewhere that I can't remember the exact percentage, but that like a lot of what you see on there has not been consented to beforehand with the actors and everything. And so it's very disturbing to me that young people would see that and think that that's what sex should
I
be.
actually, well, when I was still in Vienna and studying film, I was doing some volunteering work at a film festival, and it was the Porn Film Festival, and that was really cool because it was all female. Well, not all female, but a lot of female directors and porn filmmakers, and it was really cool to hear their perspective because they gave little talks after showing certain films. And that's the whole thing. Now everyone thinks everyone was sitting in a movie theater watching porn, but it wasn't that kind of porn. That's the whole thing. It was like in an artistic way. It was with a bit of a story, like there was stuff going on around the scenes. And it's basically just to make the porn industry fair and like equal, which was really cool. But yeah, I'm pretty sure those 13, 14-year-old boys weren't talking about those porn movies. But yeah, so that was the first myth I found when looking any myth up online. And I think the second myth I found kind of originates maybe from sex is just like what you see in porn, because that myth is that most women have orgasms from penetration. And we talked about this before. I don't have to really go into this. We talked about the orgasm gap and all of those things. So you can put one and one together here. Then number 3, we talked about sex simply means penetration. And then number 4 would be, we already talked about that as well. Women don't care about orgasms from sex as much as men do. Big misconception, I would say. And then number 5, the last myth I have written down is it is normal for sex to hurt every now and again. So you mentioned it already. Lubricant can help a lot for some women to experience more pleasure, but it's also important to remember that it actually shouldn't hurt you. The article where I found this myth in mentioned that an estimated 75% of women experience painful sex at some point in their lives. And that can have many root causes like gynecological problems, hormonal changes, trauma. Literally, there's a very long list. And there is a sexuality researcher. Her name is Shamika Thorpe. And she is an educator who specializes in Black women's sexual well-being, and she said that many women believe that pain during or after sex is a sign of good sex because you had like a wild night or something. But experts do emphasize to check with a medical professional if you experience that a lot.
Yeah, okay. I think that's a very good point as well. Like, and yeah, like we said a couple of times now, it should not be a horrible experience.
No, that's the
It
main
really should.
takeaway. Sex should not be bad, and then there might just be for you. Like you shouldn't feel bad
Yeah.
doing it. And if you do, there might be a reason that you just simply don't like it, which is fine. You might be on the asexual spectrum, or maybe there are other things going on. So
Yeah, yes. I think the only thing I wanted to mention is that, and I don't really know how to even phrase this, but like I so now that I'm in a relationship and I do have partnered sex, I really like it. I really enjoy it. And I kind of, to a certain extent, get what the fuss is about. However, I also cannot help but notice how there's this like, and this is in media, but also kind of in real life, how there's this like thing or this almost idea that sex is something that's is just, I don't know, it's almost seen as like a valid reason to, well, not valid, but that like people, for example, let me just give an example. In movies and TV shows and whatever, it's so normalized that people ruin literally their entire lives for sex. I don't know if you've ever seen In Her Shoes, but that has always stayed with me. It's a movie where Cameron Diaz's character sleeps with the man her sister is dating, literally just because she can. Not even because because she fancies him or whatever. She literally sees him and is like, why not? And that to me is something like, I don't know, just the fact that, yeah, I don't know. And of course, I don't know. It's like, I can't really, of course, my experience is very limited, very specific. So I can't really say how anyone should be living their lives. But the fact that, in media and everything, it's so normalized that like sex does that, or like, I feel like it's great. It is great. But is it risking your marriage, risking your career, risking your friendships or your relationships with your children great? I find that wild.
Yeah, I think it might be put on a pedestal.
Yes. Yeah. Just that thing. Shows like, I don't know, Love Island, Temptation Island, whatever.
Too Hard to Handle. Too Hard to Handle is the best example for this.
Where it's like, and with Temptation Island, I think this exists in, that's like where couples go and then they're like both on a different island. Then
that show gives me so much anxiety. I'm not watching it.
No. But then I do know that every single season, or like every time something went wrong, someone cheated, it was like, what kept coming back was the thing of like, oh yeah, but, and also very heteronormative and very sexist actually. Just like, oh yeah, but for a man it's just different, and it's more difficult, and they acted like they deserved some kind of medal if they didn't cheat after a week. And it's just like, it's not that, like, I don't know. you can just not do it for a week. Come on.
Yeah, and in general, that's not just in Temptation Island. That's on basically everything I've really watched. When someone's got cheated on, people, let's say there's a couple, the guy has an affair, the people hate the other woman, where I'm like, but why? Like, it's his choice to do that with the other woman. She's not some sort of siren that kind of manipulated him into sleeping with him. Her. So that needs to be changed around. Which actually, that's the movie The Other Woman, also with Cameron Diaz. It's a really good one. All the affairs get together. Well, the wife, the affair, and then the other mistress team up against that husband that cheats on everyone.
I mean, I do. I definitely agree with this. Like, we definitely have this narrative where it's like, oh, the man was almost this completely helpless person. He couldn't do anything against that woman, and like the web that she had made for him, and she used all of her charms. And what could he do? Honestly, what was he supposed to do? However, I also think how you can do that to someone else is also. Yeah, I feel like the person who cheats on their partner, of course, is the person in the wrong. But I also feel like, as the other person, if you know that they're in a relationship, I'm always a little bit like, honestly, how can you do that to someone? I don't know.
Yeah. Also, and this is judgmental, I guess, but that's how I am. If I imagine meeting someone who's in a relationship and we start an affair, and then that person decides to leave their current partner for me, and we start a relationship, I could never do that, because I'd be like, well, you did it once, why would you do it to me? you obviously don't care enough about the person you are in a relationship with.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, and of course I know that, like, people are human and people make mistakes and things happen, but yeah, I'm also not the most forgiving person when it comes to things like that. And I can be very black and white about it because yeah, I guess like you said, I'm just judgmental. But we all are. Everyone likes to pretend they're not. We all are. But yeah, for me, I think also, um, like I've said many times right now, but I feel like maybe the first part of this episode almost seemed like I am somehow against sex or I don't enjoy it. I really do. Like, I really enjoy it. I love it. Like I said, in the relationship that I'm in. But what I love so much more in the relationship that I'm in is coming home after work, getting pizza from the cheap place around the corner together, watching 90 Day Fiancé together and shouting at people, and then going to bed and each reading a book and then going to, like, that to me is still so much more important that I'm just like, why would I ever, I don't know, be like, oh, let me risk this because I'm a little bit bored or because I don't know. It's just that to me is so much more intimate.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think sex is the highest level of intimacy you can have in a relationship. I think everything around it, like you said, ordering the greasy foods, enjoying them, feeling bloated together afterwards. And I don't know, like there's so much stuff. Like seeing me suffering, and again, I'm talking about my period, being on my period in the worst state ever, but probably not smelling great because I've been cuddling a hot water bottle the whole day, so I'm sweating, but still being cuddled during that time. Like that's the intimacy I really wouldn't want to risk. The gross stuff is a lot more intimate than the sexy stuff.
I feel like this episode has been an absolute roller coaster.
It has been. It did. But I love it.
This was unhinged, but I'm here for it.
This is the most like people. By the way, thank you everyone for listening to the first episode we had in 2024. The feedback we have gotten is really nice. People told me it was one of their favorite episodes so far, and also that they find it really impressive that we're so willing to share things about ourselves. Well, if you thought we shared a lot in that one, I hope you enjoyed this one. And I hope my mom just didn't even listen. But if you did, you're going to live with the information. We will not have a conversation about any of this.
Well, I had a good time. I don't know about anyone else. Maybe we've scarred everyone. Well, we haven't done the highs and the lows yet.
Oh yeah, let's end this roller coaster ride with our highs and lows of the last week. Do you want to start?
Yes, but I don't really have a low, which is good, I think.
Lucky you.
I know. I know you do. No, I don't really have one. My highs are that last weekend and this weekend, I've had some friends over. So last weekend, my friends Lisa and Christophe came over with their baby Luna, and so they stayed at mine for a couple of days, and so I got to bond with the baby a little bit as well, and it was so nice. It was lovely. I actually miss the baby a little bit. But I've also this has also definitely, this is extra proof for me that I really like babies. Like I really 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 enjoy babies. Also, when babies cry, it doesn't really bother me. It's just like everything from the age of 2 to like 18 that I'm not the biggest fan of.
Maybe even 29. I feel like I'm only now out of everything.
But yeah, I really really liked it. And then now this weekend, another one of my friends is here. And yeah, so that has just been really, really nice. Well, from tomorrow onwards, I don't want to see anyone for 2 weeks because my social battery is empty. But yeah, I just had a really, really nice time with friends. Yeah.
And the highs were so high you couldn't even get down to the low. That's good.
Yeah.
That's nice. Well, I'm going to start with a low then. My low was the last 2 nights. My puppy Otti, she had I don't know. We don't know what she has. She must have eaten something, but the poo has been flowing, and I mean, this literally it is not solid. And the last 2 nights, we had to get up every hour or every 40 minutes, take her outside, go back in, and then she's been sick, and then we had to go to the vet, and we have to give her medicine. It's just not nice seeing an animal. It looks so cute as well, just suffering, and they don't understand. Like when she hears herself fart when she poos, and this is a little bit funny, but she kind of is surprised and confused, and she's looking what's making that noise. And it's like, yeah, I'm very tired. I did not sleep last night because last night I actually was alone with her. Um, yeah, we hope she's going to be better soon. We're going to see a vet again this week, get her checked more, but we've been told it should be fine over the next couple of days. So that's my low. Smelly low, not going to lie. And then my high is that I finally have some trips booked for this year that I'm really excited about. I got this all in last week. I'm going to visit a friend at the beginning of February, and then I'm also having a trip planned with 2 friends from the UK. We're going to Hamburg, which I'm really looking forward to. And yeah, I mean, there's some stuff in plan for the summer, but these are the trips that are the closest to now and that I booked last week. So I'm really excited for that.
Yeah. It seems so exciting. I've never been to Hamburg. I really want to go as well. So, before we wrap up, we want to say a big thank you to all of you who made it to the end of the episode. It was a journey. We hope you enjoyed it and maybe even heard something that you could relate to. And remember, the journey does not end here because we'll be back next week with a brand new episode.
And here's the best part. We also want to hear from you. Maybe some of you also love oversharing. We know that each one of you has your own unique experiences and stories. So don't be shy. Connect with us on Instagram at We Are Millennial Musings or on TikTok, Millennial Musings. And yeah, share your own musings, funny moments, or even not so glorious times of being a millennial or any other generation.
Absolutely. So until next week, stay curious and keep those stories coming.
Bye.
Bye.